What do TikTok, Instagram, and in-game sports betting have in common? Well, on this episode, you're going to find out. Welcome back to another episode of the HeyUSA podcast. I'm Nick Garcia, senior reporter, Play USA, and with me, as always, I'm joined with Brant James, lead writer of Play USA. Brant, how'd you spend your 3-day weekend for President's Day?
It was wonderful. It's a very, very big day in our house, President's Day. We all dress up as the American presidents, and then we simulate the birth of the country, the trials and tribulations, and mostly we just sat around watching TV and movies.
What president did you dress up as? If you had to pick one.
I'm a big Millard Fillmore guy, and for obvious reasons, so I just won't leave it at that.
Smart. That's good. So, we got a special guest coming on today's episode. His name is Tomash Devenishek. He is the founder, CEO of Kero Sports. He's going to tell you all about in-game sports betting. We're going to chat a little bit about that here a little bit later. But before we get into that, Brant, it's Tuesday. Still nothing with MLB. There's, no football news going on. No QB chaos. What do you got on your radar for this week?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, happy 2/2/2/2. I know just like President's Day is a big deal in my house. I know that in particular, the numerologist that you are is a very, very large deal in your house. So, I hope all is well there.
Yeah.
Branching out a little bit into the netherworlds of weirdness and possibility in sports betting. As you said, we're sort of in the region where baseball is trying to work it out. Each side is giving a little. No one wants to be the one that gives the most. What I have interesting coming up this week, I had a chance to speak with Joe Cunningham. He's a Democrat in South Carolina. I know there is one. He is a former member of the U.S. House of Representatives representing South Carolina. He lost his reelection bid to go back to the House from South Carolina, and now he's focused on winning the Democratic nomination for governor.
Okay.
He wants to become the new governor, South Carolina, unseat Governor McMaster, and one of his major planks is bringing sports betting to a state that has been extremely gambling averse in the past, to the point where I think it was about 12 years ago, a couple of Joes playing poker in their living room were prosecuted. Finally, the case was thrown out. Not a great place except for lottery and Powerball to gamble, that's South Carolina. But he's labeling it as a freedom issue, the freedom to go play some sports bets, and he hopes that will resonate with South Carolinians. It will differentiate him, he hopes, and maybe lead him to the State House. So we had a nice interview with Joe Cunningham via Zoom last week. We'll play a snippet for you now, and we'll have the full-length interview for you later where you can enjoy it. And if you're a South Carolinian, maybe you'll get convinced.
All right. Well, let's play that clip.
In a day and age, Brant, where it's so hard for Democrats and Republicans to find anything to agree on. You can't even get them to agree on what day it is. And the fact that this has support on both sides of the aisle is refreshing. And I think it's even, encouraging to move forward and move on. And, at the end of the day, this comes down to personal liberty and personal freedom. And if somebody wants to throw down $20 on a football game, who is the governor of South Carolina to say otherwise and prevent them from doing that? I mean, we're coming off the Super Bowl where a ton of money was wagered. And a lot of that was, all the money in South Carolina that was wagered was done under the tables and was done illegally. And we're just talking about bringing that out of the shadows and regulating it and taxing it and starting to tackle some of the problems we have in our state.
So there you have it, a little snippet of Joe Cunningham, courtesy of Brant. It's interesting with South Carolina because they're kind of on an island because they're surrounded by a few states that have sports betting in general. Their neighbors to the north, North Carolina, is currently in the process of trying to legalize mobile sports betting. They have retail betting at one of their Native American tribes currently, but they're in the process of trying to get mobile legalized. So if they could do that before their neighbors to the south, that'd be pretty beneficial. South Carolinians who, I don't know if they're really betting on the Tar Heels or Wake Forest or NC State, but essentially they'll be able to just cross the border and start placing some bets.
Absolutely. As Joe said, I'd asked him what his ceremonial first sports bet would be in South Carolina if this all works, and he mentioned Clemson. He didn't actually say it with that dumb accent that I use, but I'm sure folks in South Carolina would be very interested in betting on Clemson because, well, they used to win a lot and they get very excited. South Carolina is one of those places covered in golf courses. You know, there's dollar bills changing hands. There's a gambling culture in South Carolina, and he asserts this and says that's one of the reasons why he thinks that folks there would embrace it. There was a poll a few years ago. I don't know how much traveling you've done in South Carolina. I used to have to go there for work all the time. Notoriously bad roads. They seem to be paved with rubble. There was a poll, 70% of South Carolinians said they would be in favor of legalized gambling if the money went to make better roads for South Carolina. So they might be able to get on board with this. But this is going to be a really tough road for Joe Cunningham. He has a primary opponent. He's got to get past Governor McMaster. He also has to get past an incredibly red electorate. 6 of the 7 U.S. House representatives are Republicans, both senators, and the state of South Carolina has not elected a Democrat to the governorship in pushing a quarter century now. So it's going to be very hard. You wonder if a Democrat could run on a plank of re-erecting Confederate statues and still have no chance in South Carolina. I'm not exactly.
That's going to be, I mean, I guess that's why they call it red tape, right? So more like a red wall in this instance. Yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting to follow. I mean, you're seeing states like Alabama and Georgia taking up the issue. So seeing South Carolina get on board, it makes sense for them to at least discuss the issue. If anything moves forward, quite challenging. But yeah, we got, we'll pay attention to that and keep you updated as it progresses. I mean, with that, Brant, do you think it's time to bring on our guest? I mean, should people hear what Tomash has to say about in-game sports betting?
I can barely contain myself. Let's go find out.
All right, here we go. All right, so everyone, we're joined with Tomash Devenishek. Did I get that right?
Got it right.
All right, he is the founder and CEO of Kero Sports. Instead of me kind of telling everyone what Kero Sports is, Tomash, why don't you just tell everyone, give us the hierarchy, a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and basically the idea behind Kero Sports.
So I'll tell you what it is first. It's an algorithmically curated in-game micro betting engine that lives inside the apps of major professional sports teams, that lives inside web products of licensed operators, and very soon will live inside digital assets of media and rights holder companies. And the genesis of our story comes from my experience as what I would classify as a casual fan. So I am not a sharp sports bettor, although I am an avid sports fan. And I think the distribution of people who consume sports more so resembles me than your typical, high value customer over at your sports book. And so for me, I've grown up in the digital space. I was a product director, CTO of some very large and successful companies. And in around 2019, I kind of had an opportunity to just pursue whatever I wanted. And that mission became solving my own entertainment conundrum as it related to sports, because the way that I consumed sports was most of the time I'm at home watching the game on TV, right? Sometimes I'm in arena, etc. But most of my consumption was at home. And so it felt a little bit too dull, and the sportsbook experience didn't necessarily solve it. Of course, if you have money on the game, it's going to be more fun watching that game, but that just sort of scratches the surface. And so I asked myself the question, if sports betting was to follow the general trends of digital, right? And you could see the vector of entertainment consumption getting to what we see today with TikTok becoming the number one destination on the web. And so it's like obvious to everyone, right? But we're talking 2019 and even predating that a little bit. I knew that the casual fan is going to reject the sportsbook product. And so if you call that the first generation product, what is the second gen product? That was the kind of question. And the answer became it has to have two components. First of all, it has to be social. Because if the majority of folks are watching from home, and you have stats by Facebook, for example, saying that 92% of people second screen, right? That again, that's kind of a no-brainer now, but we're going back a few years. And so if it has to be social, what else does it have to do? And to me, it was highly contextual bets on what I am seeing now, right? So less so the LeBron is going to score 40 points and then you move the line mid-game, but rather you see LeBron miss three-pointers, and whether you love him or hate him, you're going to have an opinion about whether he's going to score the next one, right? So using contextuality within the game to deliver a micro betting experience, and that was sort of those two things, algorithmically curated micro betting and social, became the pillars of the experience that we wanted to build. And I'll dive into kind of the rest of the story, but I hope that gives you a good background.
It does. So that's kind of where as we introed this, we kind of compared it. I know I spoke with you in the past, but kind of like this TikTok, kind of like this Instagram, where people's attentions are only held as long as it takes for their finger to swipe from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. And you're kind of saying that could be potentially the future of in-game betting. Is that correct? Did I kind of sum that up a little bit?
100%. I think short attention spans and low effort UI, right? Those are the two, if I would summarize what you just said, are the two key points. So short attention spans, again, we all know that that's true. So for you to do, like, think of a daily fantasy game, and I'm not knocking that down. That's a great form factor. Yeah. But that takes a long time for you to get to the point where you feel fulfilled by that experience, right? So you make, even if it's daily, you're going to draft your team, et cetera, and then you have to wait until the end of the day to see a result. Whereas when you're watching something in real time, how much attention span can you have until you grab this device, right? Very little, because the game has peaks and valleys. And so guess what? Because the entertainment factor falls down sometimes during the game, you just naturally, it's subconscious. You gravitate to something else. And so you know that Twitter or TikTok or Instagram has a fairly consistent entertainment value. And so if the game is not entertaining enough, great, I'm going to see what people are saying on Twitter. And so what you're doing is you're really just migrating over to something else. And so for us, it was, well, guess what? If we asked you if we asked you to bet on something that's going to happen within the next 1 or 2 minutes, you might actually continue to pay attention and be entertained by it. And so short attention spans and then low effort UI, I want to address that as well. Most of today's sportsbook first gen offerings are extremely high intensity user interfaces. What do I mean by that? You have to go in, you have to find the right probabilities, you have to, or the right markets, understand the probabilities, do the math in your head, and then bet on it. Right, so that's extremely intensive. It takes you potentially minutes to do that. Now, if you switch over to how TikTok works, as you said, the only effort is the swipe of a thumb, right? And so technology in general is all about making things a lot more effortless. And so it was, for me, at least very clear back then that if you can make it so that it's curated, because what does TikTok do? It takes billions of videos and algorithmically curates them into a single video at a time, requiring you to do this gesture with your thumb, and that's it from a user effort, let alone skill, right? Because again, in order to be able to make the right picks, you need skill. And so with what we deliver, you pretty much just need an opinion, right? So will LeBron score that next 3-pointer? You hate him, you say no because you think he sucks at threes. If you love him, you think, yeah, he's going to make that one. And you just swipe it left or right.
Wait, nugget check. You said something that was really interesting. Did you say that 92% of people watching games now are doing second screen?
Yeah. So there's a study by Facebook. I actually pulled it up before. It's called The Changing Profile of Sports Fans Around the World. And then the two big sound bites out of it, one is the 92%. The other one is the demographic breakdown. So in the US and Canada, the male to female distribution is actually only 53 to 47, which is mind blowing, right? Because if you think about sports betting, it's not the same, right? So 47% is female fans watching. What are they doing? How are you amplifying that experience? So we try and address that, and I'm sure you'll ask me some questions about it.
How much of this is the communal aspect? Because, we can all sit on the couch alone with our phones, but some people want to brag or they want to show other people how great, their flower arrangement or their dinner looks. But people also just sort of like to communicate with each other. I mean, how much does that involve itself in this too? Because it seems like at the bottom of it, people still want to talk to or communicate with each other in some sort.
Massively. I think, I'm Canadian. Well, I live in the US now, but I was born in Russia, grew up in Israel, and then sort of moved to Canada and spent a lot of time there. And one of my favorite sports apps was The Score. And before they even became a book. So The Score, one of the puzzling phenomenon that I witnessed there back in 17, 18, 19 was every game that they had, they would have a chat for that game. So I'm not sure if you guys have ever used that. And if you jumped into that chat, it was popping. And so I never understood, why are you guys here? Why are there so many fans here in The Score app discussing? And what were they discussing? Funny enough, their bets all the time.
Betting. They were talking about betting. Yeah, absolutely they were.
People would be like, I'm plus this and that. And so it was definitely something that if you did the research back then, you could see that this would be important because people were already showing you that they were doing it. And they were hacking their way to it, right? Like The Score isn't a default destination for social experiences against sports consumption, but it would fulfill it, and therefore people went there. So it's like, okay, well, if you could build it as a dedicated destination, I think it would be good, and we validate that premise.
Yeah, it's crazy how far, kind of like you said, things have come. I have a quote here from you that says, "Today's sports betting products will be rejected by the next generation." I got that straight from the Kero Sports sites. Can you kind of break down, what you want people to take away from you saying that?
I think I said it at SBC actually in November or December. So think about, especially in the US and Canada, right? People did not grow up with sports betting as a form of entertainment. It was just outlawed, right? So if you take today's 17-year-old, they've never even touched a sportsbook app, as opposed to somebody who lives in England or whatever, and you've got books on every corner and all that stuff. It's sort of ingrained into the culture. It isn't as ingrained here, but what is definitely ingrained is digital entertainment on this device. And so what are its form factors? Like if you could break it down into the common denominators, it's low effort, short attention span, algorithmically curated, right? All of those things that we just talked about. Yeah. And so why would someone who is used to swiping their thumb and get this much entertainment suddenly go to something that is highly complex and confusing for them and doesn't necessarily drive the same entertainment value, right? So I make this distinction between the sharp bettor, and sharp is a loose term, right? But it's people who understands how betting works. And so for those guys, I think today's products are great, right? Because they are risk trading. So I'm not talking about that before anybody shuts me down and says, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the other 80%.
Talking about me.
Well, right? I'm talking about this 41% of women watching sports, right? What are they going to do? What do women do in casinos? What are the games that they play? Slots. How do slots work? Press a button, right? You don't need skill. You don't need to understand that form factor. So
sometimes I like to think that I'm a sharp bettor, and then I lose all my money. I realize that I'm not a sharp bettor.
We all do. Yeah. You should see some of the stuff we see with the pro sports team deployments that we have. We'll have a bet that should be fairly distributed, like should be a 50-50. And then 97% of people will bet on their team. And it's like, oh, you guys are definitely irrational here.
Tomash, I know 0.0% about coding, but that stuff is fascinating to me. So I have a question that could be really stupid, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to ask it anyway. Okay. So the way your platform, if that's the proper word, works. Okay. So you go to Sportsbook ABC and you say, I want to integrate what we do into what you do. You have to have a deal, and then you start working with their coders, or is stuff open source where you can prove to them how it works? Is it push notifications? Like if I've got what you do on my phone through DraftKings, what am I going to notice that's different?
Yeah. So I mean, I can tell you through an example that you can actually go and check out tomorrow. So the Chicago Bulls, who's a partner. If you download the Chicago Bulls app, inside that app lives the Kero SDK. So the SDK is a set of code. We give it to their app developer. It takes them half a day to integrate it. And then there's a button called Bulls IQ. You tap that button. As soon as you do that, you're in the Kero environment. So from an integration standpoint, it's fairly seamless. So as you rightly noted, we are a white label platform. So we are not out there chasing customers, trying to sign up our own users. We work with bodies that have the fan bases or the audiences. And then push notifications, of course, as part of that, SMS notifications, all kinds of stuff. And basically, all of the user experience is done on our side, and it involves both the front end UI, so the stuff that people are actually interacting with and experiencing, as well as the back end and the data and analytics and the algorithmic curation, which I think is the key, right? Because the key that we realized very quickly was you can't curate in-game micro betting by hand. Even if you have 5 or 6 people sitting there trying to draft markets on stuff that they're seeing in real time, it's going to be pretty awful because humans are just not good enough at this stuff, right? We can't react.
Yeah.
But if you can build the right algorithmic capabilities, now you're cooking with gasoline. And so a small anecdote that I share is when we first started, we had no idea what the cadence should be. So we started with 5-minute bet windows. So something would happen, we'd put out a bet. 5 minutes later, we'd push another one. And our engagement was pretty awesome at the time. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's see if we can condense this. And so we went to 4 minutes and things got better, and 3 minutes and things got even better, and then 2 minutes. And it was the more we compacted that window, the higher our engagement got. And then I said, well, if it's true going this way, you have to test the hypothesis of what happens when you go back, right? And so we went back to 5-minute windows. And one of the amazing things about having a real-time chat is it's kind of an instant feedback loop, because people will tell you if something's not working or if they don't like something. And as soon as we went back to 5, people just flipped out. What the hell happened? Where are the bets? We need more bets, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't understand the phenomenon back then, but I asked somebody who came from the gaming space, and he explained this to me so well. He said, you put people in a state of flow as you shrunk down those windows, because flow is what people are in when they play slots, right? You zoom out of the world, you focus, and it's really coming from the fact that every time you spin, you get a dopamine drip hit. And then you took them out of flow. Of course, they're going to be upset. You gave them something that they were enjoying, and then you took that away. They're going to be pissed. And after that, I really spent a tremendous amount of time with my team understanding the physiological powers of the slots kind of experience, and trying to model our algorithmic capabilities against that as much as possible. And that translates into a number of things now, where if you play a slot machine, you're not going to lose 20 times in a row, right? You're going to get a win. And why is that? Because if you lost 20 times in a row, you're going to walk away from that machine. You're going to say this machine is biased, even though it's not. So same for us, right? If we're going to deliver to you 10 micro bets over the next 5 minutes, we're going to make sure that at least one of those is easy enough that you can win, because you need to win in order to keep playing. And we see about 30 minutes of playtime per user per game now, which is tremendous. And a lot of that is due to many of the things that we've learned analyzing how slots mechanics enable this state of flow.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, when you think about it from an athlete standpoint, it's exactly the same. A player gets in a flow, hits 5 shots in a row, the coach benches him, he's gonna be pretty pissed. But out of one of those 5, if he misses 5 in a row, maybe 10 in a row, one of those got to be a foul, and he makes that free throw. Then he's like, all right, now all I got to do is get back in my flow. So yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. It's a way that I've never thought of. And I mean, I wish DraftKings had that with me right now, because then I'd probably be hitting a lot more.
From your mouth to their ears. we're here when they're ready. I joke, obviously.
Tomash, can you tell what people like more than others? Maybe like what sport or what kind of bet, and like what people just keep hitting on. I mean, we always seem that we have the preconceived notion. Okay, they like, obviously they like football, or they like betting on, you know, results of this next play or whatever. What are you seeing?
So first of all, let me kind of break down where we are and where we're not. So we are in basketball, hockey, and football right now. Our next few are going to be baseball, soccer, and then hopefully tennis and golf, depending on the order of some of the relationships that we're about to launch. I would say that in terms of popularity, the most beloved ones are the highly contextual ones. So we also understand that we don't control when somebody drops in, right? So you could drop in before the game started, you could drop in middle of Q1. Let's just keep using the basketball analogy. What the worst experience that could be for you is when you drop in and there's nothing for you to bet on, because then you're sort of asking the question of, well, how does this work? And the best experience is there are actually a couple of bets waiting for you. Now, in order to accomplish that, we have to, we call them different tiers of markets. So we have kind of longer term tiers, and we make sure that some of those are always up, right? So it's, will the Bulls hit more than 40 points in this quarter or something like that? And so that's always sitting there. But those are actually a lot less popular than things like a dunk just happened, and we say, will there be another dunk in this quarter, right? Because you just saw it happen. So I think the way that we internally communicate about this is emotional charge, right? What are the markets that have the highest emotional charge? And usually those are ones that relate to something that you just saw. So I was at a recent Warriors game, and Steph just kept hitting those threes. Boom, boom, one out after. And so after like 4 or 5, I thought to myself, okay, well, he's got to miss one soon enough, right? So what just happened there for me? Emotional charge. Now, if you allow me to bet on that, I would bet $100, you know, because I'm emotionally charged against that point, that opinion, if I may. So those are the most engaging ones that we're seeing. And there are hundreds of them, right? Like
little did you know that Steph Curry went on to hit the next 12. So
he has never missed again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I guess, you know, kind of like you said, the you know, sporting, you know, changing topics a little bit. You're hoping to get soccer on there. Aren't you a big soccer fan?
I am a massive soccer fan. And soccer, funny enough, is I think one of the more difficult ones to do in-game micro betting for, because the data isn't as rich and you just don't have the natural breaks. So with basketball, it's really cool because, or football, you have these natural cycles, right? Timeout gets called or whatever. And you can start peppering people during those breaks when you know the commercials come on and they go to grab Twitter, right? So it's sort of a natural alignment where now you're just choosing their destination of choice. Whereas with soccer, the play could be on for 15 or 20 minutes before any stoppage, right? Before a corner kick happens or the ball goes out of bounds. So it's a little more difficult, but yes, for us, first of all, it's a global sport, right? So it opens up our distribution opportunities. But second of all, we've been just so highly focused on the local market, right? We've only been around technically, depending on how you count, because we started 2 weeks before the pandemic. That's when we launched the New York Islanders, and then got crushed, obviously, by just like everybody else. And then relaunched the following season in November. So, the company is less than 2 years old, I would say. And so the focus primarily has been on the local North American market. But now that we just closed our first round of financing and got some more capital, we're definitely hiring against the right resources and assets to be able to expand globally, because I think what we do certainly appeals to a much, much wider market than just North America.
Interesting. Nice. Yeah, I can see the point with soccer. I know that Formula One and NASCAR really tried to up their betting markets, but there's not a lot of stoppages. I mean, it's so constant. There's such constant information that by the time you bet something, your bet could be wrecked before you even hit it with your thumb because, well, someone literally wrecked. I mean, it's almost too quick, too fluid. So,
yeah.
I see your point.
What are some, you mentioned the Chicago Bulls apps. What are some other apps that people here in the US can download to kind of check out where
49ers, Vikings, Falcons. We just did something in Canada with North Star Gaming, which is going to be one of the operators there. So, and a bunch of really big ones dropping, but I can't share until it's all.
You did mention, sports that are in season. You mentioned New York Islanders, correct? Like that's hockey still going on right now, obviously, that people can check that out with. And the Bulls you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
What about Blackhawks? Blackhawks in there? I'm going to a Blackhawks game on Friday.
Not
so
yet. I'm hoping, we're trying to lock in that Chicago market.
Yeah.
But yeah. And hopefully the Sox soon as well. So
nice.
That's why baseball is kind of one of the next ones in terms of algorithmic capabilities, which is really great, right? Like baseball is so awesome because you have so many stats and so many stoppages. You can just churn these things out all day.
Wow. As far as questions go, I mean, I my notebook is empty. What about you, Brant? You got anything else to ask?
He humored and answered my wonky tech question like a pro, like someone who is in charge of the company. Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. He's just bragging with his Miami. He looks like skyline back there. His old South Florida skyline. Just stick it in their faces.
Happy Miami. I just moved. The reason you guys are getting this view is because everything here is complete chaos. To give you a nice view just in case this goes out on video.
Nice. Well, with that, Tomash, thank you so much for being out. You're actually one of our first featured guests on the pod. So, thank you for jumping on with us and speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. And I genuinely was so looking forward to it. So I hope this valuable content for your listeners.
For sure.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We'll stay in touch and, enjoy sunny Florida.
Thank you, guys. All the best.
All right. Have a good one. So there you have it, our interview with Tomash Devenishek, CEO, founder of Kero Sports. If you live in one of those markets where it's available, go check it out. I'm actually probably going to download it on the Chicago Bulls app when I check out the Bulls box in 2 weeks, so that'll be fun. Brant, before we leave, do you have anything else to add?
No, that was great. That was nice having Tomash on. I feel like we got a little smarter. Sounds pretty interesting. If only I lived in a place where they had legal sports betting, I could go see a team with it in the app. I could check it out too. But
yeah,
stuck that in my face. Thanks.
I guess with that, follow us on Twitter. If you have any questions, like, follow, subscribe, and you know the drill.